Hi everyone, welcome to SewSpark Studio. I'm Paula, and this morning we're at the Serger, and I'm going to be talking about how to deal with your serger threads. The serger doesn't come with a reverse button, and so we need a way sometimes to deal with tying off thread ends so that they don't unravel. Now, there are times you don't need to do anything. If I was going to sew across the end with another seam, either on the sewing machine or the serger, I wouldn't need to finish off these ends. But there are times where you want to do something. So this morning I'm going to show you 5 methods of securing serger ends, and 2 of them are on the serger, or the overlocker, as some people call it, and 3 of them are methods you would use away from the serger. So I'm going to start at the serger with a couple techniques that you can use on the serger itself, and then I'll show you some techniques that don't require your serger for securing the seams. So I've got just a piece of fabric here that I'm going to be using. So the first way, you want to chain off or serge off a chain of stitching, and then lift your foot. Put your fabric right beside the blade and right up to the needles, and bring that chain that you just serged in front of the foot. And it needs to be over far enough so that you're going to stitch on top of it when you start serging. And after you've serged a little bit, snip that end off and carry on. And you can see that that thread has now been stitched in and secured by your serging, and it's relatively neat on the end. Now, this method doesn't work for finishing a seam. For a method that you can use at the beginning or the end of your stitching, you're going to start by sewing backwards towards your edge, and then we'll be flipping this to sew over top of that serging. So to start this one, I am lifting my foot, and I'm about, 1.5 inches, 3-4 centimeters away from the edge of the fabric here. And I'm just going to angle on and sew up to the edge of the fabric, and then raise your needles, raise your foot, and carefully pull a little bit there so that the threads come off of the fingers that extend. Flip your fabric over, line it up, put your foot down again, and my fabric is right even with the needles here. And then sew. This is off to the side, so it'll get cut off. And then sew right up to the edge of the fabric again. And if you have trouble with that, you can do your last 2 stitches by turning your hand wheel. And then stop with the needles up again. Raise the foot, pull a little so it comes off the fingers. Flip it over. Now for this step, some videos will show you to lower your cutting blade. I'm going to be leaving mine up because I like to shortcut. But you do have to be careful you don't snip your serging edges if you're going to leave the blade up. So then again, foot down. I'm going to stitch for about 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters. And then stop with the needle up. When you pull, it doesn't pull. If you turn your hand wheel away from you for 1 full turn, needles down and up again, you'll be able to pull that out. And then you can snip your threads, and you can see both ends have been neatly finished. I missed a thread here. So those are a couple things that you can do on the serger, and now we'll look at some things that you do away from the serger. Now I'm going to show you 3 methods of securing serger threads off of the serger. So we'll start with one of these. And for this method, I use a tapestry needle. And you can actually buy a gadget just for doing this, but if you have a needle with a larger hole in it, that works just fine. And so you simply take your serger ends, and you do need to chain off a longer end for this method. And I like to fold it in half. I find it easier to thread onto the needle. And pull it through. And then flip your serging over to the back side. And you simply weave this underneath the stitching. And 2 centimeters, an inch is plenty. And then you just take your scissors and snip the end off. And we'll do the other end. This one's pretty long. You might want to cut some off before you start. And same thing, just weaving underneath the threads. So I call this weaving. And this is a neat method. I would likely use this method if I was doing an edge that is visible. So if I was doing a rolled hem on the edge of a tablecloth or something like that, and then you can pull those threads underneath on the back side, and you have a nice neat finish on the top. This is probably one of my favorites because it's very quick, and it's simply to knot the threads on each end. Now it doesn't work everywhere because you see the knot, so I would do this on the inside of a garment, for example. If I serged around a sleeve, it's going to be on the inside and you can't see it. So it involves doing a loop, and that's the method I use. Now, sometimes when you do these, the knot ends up, an inch away from where you want it. So a little trick is you can poke a pin and loop around the pin where you want the knot. And then when you pull on your thread, it will go to the end of the pin right where you want that knot. And then you pull the pin out and tighten it and trim your threads. And as you can see, there's a little bit showing there. So again, I would not use this in a visible location. Now, I don't always use a pin because I have fingernails. So I just do a loop, and then I position the loop close to the edge, and then I use my fingernail to hold that in place. But that's not 100% guaranteed. So if you want that knot precisely positioned, you might want to use the pin in order to help with that. And again, just cut your threads. So serger threads are secured, knots holding it in place, but not something you would use on a visible part of a garment. And the last method is very easy, but not my favorite one. So for this one, you actually can snip your serger threads right off, because we're going to use a seam sealant. And I'm using a brand called Fraycheck, but you can use any seam sealant that you would like. And this is basically gluing the ends of your threads here. And this will dry and set. It doesn't wash out, at least not easily. And that will work to seal your seams. Now, it's not my favorite method for a couple reasons, maybe 3 reasons. One is that when this dries, it is a little different texture. Your fabric feels a little bit firmer at that point. And so that might be something that doesn't work depending on what you're making. The other thing is that sometimes this glue will show through onto the right side and kind of make a stain on your garment. And so you want to think about where you're doing it. And there are ways you could probably do it to protect your fabric. Like if you have a seam, you could put something in between while it's drying. Now, the other part is simply that when I'm sewing, I don't want to wait for this glue to dry. I want to go right back to the machine, and I don't want glue all over my machine. So I'm a little impatient. I don't like the drying time. It is quick. It's not like it takes very long, but not quick enough for me, I guess. So not my favorite method, but super easy. And so it is an option for sealing your seams. So there you have 5 methods. 2 of them done on the serger. This one where we sewed over the seam, this one where you turn the fabric and stitch back over it, and then the 3 methods that you can do away from the serger, knotting your threads, weaving it, and using a seam sealant.